Good evening. My name is Marcela Lobos. I am right now in Chile. It's summer here, and I imagine there are many of you from many countries. Hello everyone. Thank you for listening. I will speak today about a journey that it has helped me arrive to a place of wisdom to embrace life in a positive and healthy way. Many different traditions around the world, many religions offer different maps of how to reach a place within of peace and of more fulfillment. Nevertheless, the maps are never the territory. So all maps can guide us, can be compasses for our journey, but there's no map that can replace the journey itself. This map is inspired on the hero's journey, a very ancient map before Greek times, even from the heroes of Sumeria, Mesopotamia, 5,000 years ago. And this map has been studied closely and followed even by Hollywood today to create movies, because so many of us in our culture can identify with the hero's journey. But nevertheless, the hero's journey, it can be a bit outdated for the modern person, and also it can be a little bit more the journey of the masculine than the feminine. So I am sharing this map with a fresh perspective and from my own experience. There are 13 steps. The number 13 is connected to the 13 moons of the year. So it's a very sacred and feminine number, and it inspired me for this map. I call it the journey to wisdom. And on the first step, we recognize the call from spirit. And this means that as we go about in our regular lives, suddenly or not so suddenly, we feel that something has to change, that we cannot keep living in the same way that we have been living. And sometimes the call comes in a subtle ways, and sometimes comes in a stronger way when we are not able to recognize the subtlety. And sometimes women or people, they do not know how to recognize the call from spirit. And the call from spirit has to do with shedding the old skin, whom we have been, to become someone more self-realized, self with the uppercase self, uppercase S. And so to keep evolving as a human, to keep evolving towards self-realization, enlightenment, Buddhahood, to realize our essence, our essential self. And so many times what people do is they go get a haircut, they get a new car, they get a new girlfriend, they go get tattoos, and they're trying to imprint something new in their lives. But what's really happening is that we are being called to step into whom we need to become, out of whom we have been into who we are becoming. And sometimes we think that the call has to do with an outer adventure. But when we really recognize that the call is a call for transformation within, then we can readily answer that call. I remember when I was 19, 20 years old, I felt a strong calling to shed my past, the culture, the society, the family I grew up with. I needed to find myself in a bigger way. So I left my country, my family, and my past, and for 2 years. And I made it by land all the way to the US and back, and went to every country in between. And it was an extraordinary adventure, but an outer adventure, not so much an inner adventure. And then 10 years later, once I had traveled a lot and had had many experiences, including having children and gotten married, then I was able to recognize the call of transformation as more like a inner journey. Sometimes the outer journey definitely will change us within, but we're not always able to really let go of whom we have been and open up to whom we need to become as a person of wisdom and a person on a more interesting path. So the second step, the second milestone, is the refusal of this call. Sometimes we are living our ordinary lives and we're called to live an extraordinary life, and we're afraid. We're afraid to answer the call. It happened to me, for example, once I was married and had 2 children. I knew my destiny was not just raise children and cook 3 meals a day and do dishes and be a good wife. I could feel that my potential could open me other opportunities in life, something that would fulfill me even more, though I love my children with all my heart and I love being a mother. But I felt that I could realize myself in a bigger way or in a different way. But the security of the home, having someone to pay the bills every month, it was difficult to leave that. And it's not that we have to leave that behind, but unless that it gets in the way of fulfilling our destiny in a bigger way. So a long time went by before I was able to answer the call in a more transformative way. The third milestone, it happens once we answer the call and the universe conspires in our behalf to show us that we are in the right path. So for example, when after 10 years of raising children and having a beautiful home in the US, in the mountains, beautiful life, skiing in the winter, hiking in the summer, comfortable. But though everything was working out, something in me was very oppressed. There was a part of me that was dying, and I knew I had to claim life back again. I had to step again into living life in a more full way, and I decided to answer that call and embark on an inner and outer journey, and to live the safety of the house and the safety of having someone to pay the bills every month. And I remember the day I made that decision, I went up the mountains, and it was drizzling. There was a light rain, and when I parked my car as far as I could go up the mountain, all of a sudden in front of me, right in front of me in that moment when I parked the car, and there was just nature around. There was nobody else there. I knew those mountains really well, and there was definitely nobody else in that area. And I parked the car, I stood out of the car to take a breath of fresh air and embrace the mountains and nature. And then there was a drizzle against the sun, and a big rainbow showed up right in front of me. And then not just one rainbow, but another rainbow on top of that. So I had a double rainbow. And as I was staring at the rainbows, feeling so much gratitude for the confirmation, a moose walked towards me, a huge animal with big, I don't remember how to call them, horns, moose. I don't know what are the moose horns called. But anyways, I was very surprised that it walked so close to me. And it looked at me straight in the eyes, like wanting to give me a message. And the other strange thing is that I was not afraid. And it surprised me that I didn't feel any fear. So I just stayed there, and the moose came very close, like 6 feet. And we just locked eye to eyes. After that, I got back in my car, and I drove the opposite direction to get some signal on the phone and call someone to tell my friend the news of my new life. And as I parked the car, it had stopped raining, drizzling, but again in the complete opposite side of the sky, another rainbow, and then another rainbow on top, another double rainbow. And as if that was not enough, 2 hawks came and they started flying above me, and then they flew, like giving me the message, like through the rainbow, like saying, yes, go through that portal, go, we're here to support you, the universe is supporting you. And though I had made that decision of living my ordinary life to live an extraordinary life, I was still concerned how I'm going to pay my bills, how I'm going to be a responsible mother. And that was very much still a question mark for me. And as I said, I had walked those mountains so many times, and I went for a little walk from the car, and as I had that question in my head, all of a sudden I saw about 300 sheep come very near. And my totem animal that had shown up on those days in my dreams, the wolf, recognized those sheep, those 300 sheep, as abundance. In that moment, I knew that there would be abundance in my life, that everything will be fine for me and my children. And that gave me the wisdom and the strength to just, and the confidence and the certainty to just go for it. So soon I left for Peru. The 4th milestone is parting the veil, going through the portal, crossing the threshold. So as I said, I left for Peru and I arrived to the jungle. 10 years earlier, when I did not answer my call, I had been in Peru, and I met an anthropologist who invited me to go to the jungle, and he said, if you drink the magic brew of the jungle, you will be able to meet the guardian, the jaguar. The jaguar is the guardian of the jungle, and you'll be able to hear it breathe next to you. And that was very appealing, but I know I was not mature enough. So I just went surfing instead. And so this time I arrived in the jungle and I met some shamans there, and actually I went with the Four Winds and with Alberto. We have just met, and I went with a man that Alberto trusted so much, an older man that had worked with him for so long, and I took a lot of the brew, whatever he gave me, I received. And then we went into ceremony, and in the middle of the ceremony I felt an urge to go to the bathroom. So I left the wooden house where we were to go outside, like in the jungle, naked jungle. And I was with my pants all the way down, squatting, when suddenly, right in front of me, I see jaguar's eyes, light green, almost fluorescent eyes looking straight at me, just like the moose, but this was a lot more intense. This time I did feel fear. So, and he had a big black head and a very, very shiny black hair all over the body. And what was amazing is then I looked to the side and another black jaguar with green eyes was there. And as I kept looking around, another one and another one and another one. I was surrounded by the black jaguar with green eyes. And I stopped peeing, put my pants up, pulled my pants up, and carefully went back into the shack and got in my little corner, and I was trying to hide from everything and everyone underneath my poncho. And all of a sudden something called me on the right side, from the corner of my eye to the right, and I couldn't hold myself but to look up. And when I looked up, through the screen of the shack, it jumped, the jaguar, like a huge leap, and it landed in my body. And the shamans say that then I acquired the jaguar body, and I could see the jaguar through the jaguar's eyes and feel its paws and its tail. And it was an initiation from the jungle, from the spirit of the jaguar, and a shamanic initiation, an initiation into my new path on this journey to wisdom, when we stop living an ordinary life and start living an extraordinary life. So an amazing welcoming into my new life. The next milestone is into the heart of the womb, to really actually claim a new life, an extraordinary life, to leave our little lives behind, or to leave our life behind, to step into a new life, no matter how big or how little our past life have been, but to renew ourselves. To be reborn, we must die. So when we go into the heart of the womb, we go back to the dark. We go back to the depths of ourselves. We incubate within. And there we are faced with sometimes a dark night of our soul, with our deepest fear, and even more with death itself. We gotta look at death eye to eye, and nothing can be born completely new if it doesn't cease to exist. So I had to cease to exist as I was to be able to claim a new life, a new destiny. And this happened actually after the jungle. I went to Machu Picchu with the Four Winds, and back then in 1993, Alberto had access to the ruins after they closed the ruins. After 5 o'clock, when all the tourists are gone, he knew the guards, the keepers there, so they let him in with the group. So 100 of us that were there with Alberto went to the ruins, to a special stone where they performed the death rites. And we gathered around the death stone chanting a mantra, an indigenous mantra, indigenous from the Andes. And one by one, we lay on the stone, and Alberto will disengage the student chakras, all the chakras, and then take them through the death rites. So eventually, it became my turn, and I did not feel much when he disengaged all my chakras and then lifted up my luminous body and sent my luminous body out through my head, around the world, and back into my body. But when I stood out of the stone and I stand up, I was very disoriented, very dizzy. And soon I fell on my knees. And all of a sudden I could not recognize what was happening to me. But it was like I wanted to rip my skin. So I really resonate when people say shed the old skin, because it was the most visceral kinesthetic sensation of feeling that my skin was just too tight, that my life was just too small for me. And for the first time in my life, I really knew what ego meant. And it was like, I am not this person anymore. And I started crying, like completely illogical, completely visceral. Take my ego away. I was just desperately praying to who knows who, to just whomever will listen. Take my ego away, take my ego away. And I was trying to rip my skin out of my self, which self I didn't know yet. But so a lot of tears came out. I really felt that something had to fall off. I wasn't ever going to be the same. And from there, we went to a mountain called Salcantay. A few of us, Alberto didn't go there. He went to Ausangate and he sent us to Salcantay to group. And Salcantay means the undomesticable one, the wild one, the wild feminine. So back then I was 33 and I was very athletic, and I was feeling really good about going up to 17,000 feet, always on front of the group, feeling very strong. But then as soon as we crossed the pass and we did beautiful ceremony up there, that night I had the worst diarrhea. I had to step out in the frigid cold night to go to the bathroom several times, and I woke up so dehydrated, so weak, and not being able to walk really. I was crawling, so we had to pack our things, and everybody was leaving, and I had to have a lot of help packing up my things. So me, that I was the fit, the superwoman that had, because I lived in the mountains were my playground. Now there I am, crawling, not able to walk, and especially through a part that we couldn't take horses because it was too steep. So I had to literally crawl down the mountain. And as I was crawling, I was feeling the earth. And at some point, I was just belly flat on the earth. And I started crying so deep, feeling myself so vulnerable. And I love that the word humble has the same origin than the word humus, which means earth. So I became so humble, I became so close to the earth, and to the point of complete surrendering to something bigger than me that I have never known before. I was always such a warrior, such self-sufficient person, and I grew up with two brothers. I grew up in a very masculine country, Chile, with the dictatorship. So always having to protect myself in a very masculine way. But for the first time, I completely crumbled completely, and I was in the ground, on the earth, literally, and tears coming off. I didn't know who I was anymore. So it felt like I hit bottom. There was nothing to grasp that was familiar to me. There was nothing to hold on. I was just there, lying on the earth. Thank goodness, thanks to my group, I did make it down we arrived in Machu Picchu again. And then comes the next step, the next milestone, the tests and trials. I went back home, and though I knew there would be abundance again in my life, I did have to do a lot of work to get to that place. I knew that the relationship with the father of my children, it was no longer viable. So I had to go through a lot of challenges to create a new home for me and my children, and a home and a lifestyle that would support who I was becoming, the new life that I was claiming, and that it was claiming me, because I accepted the challenge when I answered the call from Spirit. So a lot of challenges, and excuse me. But the tests and trials of the practical, how to make it in the day-to-day, into the practical. The next milestone, now we're by number 7, is the embrace by the mother, being embraced by the mother. So I did have that one moment of being embraced right there on the earth, like surrendering to her as something bigger than me. And as I started building up my new life, I did get to travel a lot, and abundance started coming my way, big time. And by now I am good friends with Alberto, and soon we are partners, and I'm traveling with him. So at one point we go to Europe to teach. I was training to teach, and though I grew up in a Catholic country, I wasn't never very Catholic. My mother decided to baptize me and my siblings when I was 13 years old, and it was more was more for the family to be at peace, that we will not go to hell when we die, than from her. She never imposed Christianity or any religion to us. So we grew up very free to feel in whatever way we wanted to feel. I am grateful to my mother for that. But nevertheless, we are in Paris in our way to teach a class, and first time for me in Paris, and it's normal that we go visit the cathedral Notre Dame, our Madonna, Notre Dame. And when I entered the cathedral, it was not the touristy season. It was not summer, so it was very empty actually, and there was mass happening. And when I entered the cathedral, I felt such sacredness in there. I was overwhelmed by light. And it's like my heart became very light, and I felt so much luminosity around me. And I saw that the priest in Latin started to give in the wafer, I think it's called, the wafer. And people would line up. And I have heard that you have to do your first communion, and you have to confess before you take the wafer. But it was like this light of this mother energy just took me there to the line. I felt completely embraced and guided into the line. And soon enough, I was in a timeless space and in a complete sacred space. And I did my communion with the mother. And not because anyone, any man or any person gave me permission. It was like the mother took me there and I did my communion with her. And so the embrace with the mother, it has to do with knowing the feminine as a force that exists all around us, and that it gives us the opportunity to experience her throughout our bodies and our psyches. But when we meet her as the goddess, the divine feminine, the sacred feminine that is so much, then we commune with her. And then it's like the barriers, our limitations as people start falling off, because now we're in communion with something much bigger than us. Similar happened with the masculine, sacred masculine, with the divine masculine. In my life, I grew up with a lot of women. Though it was a dictatorship, and in my country, in Chile, back then, 70s, 80s, power was male, and supposedly the protector and the authority was all male. But it was in my house actually the opposite. There were no males to protect us, just the opposite. Every male in my family was an issue, a problem, a situation. So, and for example, I don't know if I should give any examples, but yes, well, the men were even suiciding, they committed suicide, or they were alcoholic, or they escaped Chile for moral reasons, or they were incarcerated. So really, literally, I had all these aunts and cousins and no uncles. And my grandfathers died and they were not good either. So supposedly, in my head, the male and the masculine had to protect you and was the authority, but in reality it was just the opposite. So anyways, at one point, a couple of years later, after my first visit to Peru with the Four Winds, I went back again, now as Alberto's partner, and he went back to Ausangate, the holy mountain Ausangate, and he invited me to go with him. And I have read in his book, Shaman, Healer, Sage, that there was a place, very sacred place, a waka, a power place, that has been hundreds of years there, and shamans make offerings, and it's a very powerful, special place. And that he lets, because it's dangerous to get there, he only allows 2 students every year to go. So when I knew we were going to Ausangate, and I knew, I decided that I was going to be one of those 2 people. I was hoping that he let me. So anyways, I tried to be a good trooper the whole trip, and at the end, when it was time to go do an offering in that very powerful waka, I said, I would like to be one of those 2 people. And he said, okay, you, and then he sent another student about my age, 35 or so by now. So we went with 2 shamans, and sure enough, we had to walk through a very dangerous moraine right by the glacier, big rocks with big holes in between, and we had to be very careful. And after a couple hours, we reached this huge boulder, and underneath the boulder there were a lot of remnants of old ceremonies that have been performed there. Fabrics, old fabrics, weavings from the local people down the mountain, from the Ausangate people. Nobody lived near there at all, but they hiked there to do their offerings. This is right at the belly of the mountain, right at the belly of the glacier. So we did our offering, and when actually the shamans, when there were two of them, when they opened the offering that contained the flowers and the grains and everything that the offering package brought to make that offering, all of a sudden the shaman was very puzzled to find a wafer, and he looked at it like, what is this doing here? A wafer from the church, just like the one I had in Notre Dame. And as he was looking at it like, what are we going to do with this? It just came like a lightning of certainty. And I went towards him and said, that's mine. And I grabbed it and I looked up the mountain and I said, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender. And I put that wafer in my mouth. I felt that I had to commune with that mountain. We went back to camp, and that night I had a dream in which the mountain showed me its face. It was like a grandfather, like a grandfather that embraced me, and he told me, I will protect you. So once we have had the embrace of the mother, then the next step is to commune with the divine masculine as something that is so much bigger than us and that is always there. So to find that heart connection with the masculine, the masculine that is safe, that loves us unconditionally, that is not going to ever punish us, but just the opposite, guide us and protect us. So it is like an initiation and knowing the compassionate heart of the masculine. So that is the 8th milestone, to be in the grace of the divine masculine. And the next milestone is transcendence. Transcendence has to do with when we can arrive to this place beyond the duality of the masculine and the feminine, and just sense, feel, recognize, feel the source of both, of the masculine and the feminine, the origin, the original face, and whatever you might want to call it. Spirit, nobody says spirit has to be masculine or feminine. So spirit, the source, the greater consciousness, emptiness as it is recognized sometimes in the Himalayan traditions, that place where everything disappears, nothing has inherent existence, and there's only emptiness. So whatever it is, but it's that place in which we recognize that there's something that is common to all life, to everything, that oneness. And for me, it happened actually several times, because I have gone back to the jungle many times, and when you work with medicine plants, the medicine plants give you a gift of taste of the infinite, of the source. And so I have had a few experiences, but one time walking in the forest with no medicine, just walking with ease in the forest, I suddenly realized that there was a very luminous, very shiny light, like higher vibration on my left side, higher up. I just felt a presence there. And I paid attention, and a voice said, Marcela, you have transcended learning and teaching like the Christ. You have transcended the cross. You do no longer have to sacrifice yourself or be sacrificed in order to learn or to teach others. Now you can sip directly from wisdom. And then this presence identify himself, herself, itself as the Buddha. And as extraordinary as this might seem, this is originally the hero's journey. So this is not ordinary life. These are extraordinary events in our lives, and extraordinary things happen when you give yourself to an extraordinary life. So quantum physics, it just happens. And so this presence said, from now on, you just learn directly from wisdom. Do not need to go through pain or suffering to learn your lessons. Just pay attention. The wisdom is there. You sip directly from wisdom. And you now just embrace light and become light. And so from that point on, it's like the source of wisdom is just around in my life. A lot of beautiful teachers just show up for me and Alberto, and we're able to be in a wisdom community and really connecting to that source, that place of infinity and interdependence of everything, and essence, us in our essence. The 10th milestone or moon phase is the divine anointment, which is receiving a gift, a boon from the divine. And again, something extraordinary happened. I was at home, and I have read many times to my children books and stories from India, because for some reason I really feel drawn to those stories. So through storytelling to my children, I learn a lot about Shiva and Shakti and Krishna and all the gods and goddesses, the Hindu pantheon. And one time I did go on a pilgrimage to Krishna's birthplace in India, Mathura, and then I went to the ashram, and there a luminous being showed up, and I had a beautiful initiation there. But now I'm at home in Chile with my children, sleeping. They're sleeping, I'm falling asleep, and all of a sudden this light shows up in my room and says, I am Krishna, Marcela, and I'm with you. And I said, yeah. And he said, and I'm with you. And I said, well, you're just saying that, but you really are with Radha. You pretend to be with many, but your heart, you are with Radha, with your beloved. And you can just show up as emanations everywhere and just pretend. So yeah, it's nice that you're here, but you really are with Radha, your beloved, your consort. And then Krishna said, but I want to give you a boon, a divine gift. And I said, of course, I'm here, I'm open, please. And then he said, think of the person that you have the most difficult time with, not to say that you hate. So I did have someone that I was having a very difficult time with, and a lady, a woman, and he said, now I want you to wish her everything that you wish for yourself. And that was a very difficult challenge for me, because she really, I had it with her, and she really put me on the spot, and I just wanted her out of my life, and it was very difficult to wish her anything good at that point. Not that I wish her bad, but it was just difficult to even spend any energy on her, wishing her anything good. And Krishna said, what do you wish for you, Marcela? And I responded, I wish peace and a house with Alberto and the kids and harmony and this and that. Okay, now wish that to her. Wish her a beloved and a beautiful house. And that was not so bad, but then wish her the same that you wish for you in your career, in your path as a medicine woman. And since she lived in the same community, that was started to get more and more difficult. But nevertheless, I went through the exercise, and each time that I wished her good things, first my heart was very tight, very close. It was even painful to do this exercise, but as Krishna kept coaching me, it was like my heart was like a flower that started opening its petals. So finally, after half an hour, my heart was fully open, like a flower, like a lotus flower. And then I understood, and I said, now I understand, Krishna. Now I know you are with me, because I understand that Radha is pure heart. So once you have a pure heart, Krishna is with you. So that was a beautiful divine gift and a boon. The next milestone is, or the next step, the next thing that can happen in our journey to wisdom is that we are blinded by the light. When things go so well, everything gets so extraordinary, all the stories I'm telling you, maybe they're too extraordinary, but when you become attached to the extraordinary, to have the divine manifest in such tangible way for you, and you just want to remain in that space of the extraordinary, of the light. And what's happening today, a lot of people are doing medicine plant, which is great for awakening, but when we become addicts and people are just wanting to take more medicine plant, more medicine plant, to remain in this space of magic. But there's nothing like the magic that we reach when we are able to create sacred space, when we are able to create the magic from within, rather than having all the time to have it from the outside. So a lot of people, once they experience too much light, too many divine gifts, they feel a resistance to go back to the ordinary. There's that famous saying that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. So people refuse many times to go back home and do dishes, sweep the house, look after the children, be a good wife, be a good husband, etc. They want to remain in that space of floating, not grounded. So it's necessary that we go back to our bodies, to our doing with our hands, to creating, that we get grounded again. And that for that we must return home, because the divine and the universe conspires to give us all these gifts, to show us all this, for us to go back home and then share the gifts. So the the 11th milestone was blinded by the light, not wanting to go back home, to be in complete denial. And then the 12 is actually the return. And when Spirit really wants us back home, doing our homework, helping others realize their essence, their wisdom, their gifts, helping others to step into extraordinary lives, then Spirit sometimes gives us a push to get back home really fast. So this journey is very long. It's like going into a long labyrinth and finding our way through and reaching all these milestones. And then it's like at the end, in the return, the exit is just one step away. You reach the interior of the labyrinth and it was a huge way in, and then just in one step you're out. So that is how the return is sometimes, when we must go back and share the gift. I remember traveling a lot with Alberto, and how traveling and teaching can be so seducing, meeting interesting people, getting to know a lot of exotic places, and feeling that now you are very exotic and an interesting person because you know all these places, you've been there, done that, and then a lot of opportunities open up. All that can be very seducing. And I remember being on a trip like that, and so much that seduction, but my body got constipated. 4 days went by, and we've been traveling for 3 weeks, and I was not going to the bathroom. 5 days go by, now we're in Australia, beautiful places to visit, amazing people to meet, and I did not go to the bathroom. 6 days, can you imagine? 6 days not going to the bathroom. We went to the pharmacy, I had tried everything natural, didn't work. Now we asked for the most heavy duty medicine that they had in the pharmacy, and they gave it to me. They said, this is the dose. I took a double dose. The night came and I just did not go to the bathroom. And that night I just said, this is it. I gotta go back home. So the next morning I went to the airport, changed my plane tickets, and I had taken 2 pills that morning and still didn't go to the bathroom. The plane took off and we reached cruising altitude, and as soon as the pilot liberated the seatbelt lights, I mean, we could stand up, it all came, like the urge that I did not have in 7 days, it came all at once. I stood up, and anyways, the flow of 7 days came out, and many tears, and my moon right behind. So I was like, everything just flowed like a river of emotions out of my body. And I needed to go back home to be with my kids. So all that journey and all that seduction, all the sudden, it was time to go back home. In 13 hours, I was back home with the kids. And so the return home, is important to go back home. When it's time, it's time. We must go back home. And we should not refuse it. Sometimes we'll get very sick, very ill. Something will happen if we do not listen. And the last step is sharing the gift. You have gone through an extraordinary journey. You have met many allies in the way, many teachers. You have had many realizations, gifts. You have gone through death, through big challenges. Now you have wisdom. You have been given gifts to share in your community, however big or small. But it's time to share. So the 13th milestone is to share the gift. And maybe perhaps what I want to communicate at this point is a gift that was given to me in the jungle at one point. It's a long story, but to make it short, I was given an initiation for women. I was connected to a lineage that says that they free themselves from suffering. Women who freed themselves from suffering. And they're in the invisible world. There were women that suffered so much, but then they came to this place of learning how not to suffer in the world. So they're bodhisattvas. They're beings that are helping now, in selfless service. And they have become a lineage, and they initiated me, and they said, now please share this gift with as many women as you can. And this gift is called the right of the womb. And the wisdom is that the womb is not a place to store fear or pain. The womb is to create and give birth to life. So I have been, since a couple years ago, in service to this message and sharing this gift with as many women as I can. And actually there's a website, therightofthewomb.com. If you ever feel like wanting to be part of this living lineage, welcome to check out the website. There are many womb keepers at this point all over the world, almost 50 countries. And so it has been a beautiful journey. And that is, I don't do it for money, I don't do it for fame. Actually, I'm as invisible as possible, but really right there, trying to make it all happen. And it's my gift. And that gift, it brings me so much joy, and the gift, the more one gives to the world, sometimes the more that we receive, and especially if it's selfless, with no, and we have to eat too, so you can share the gift and do what you need to do to pay your bills also. But I feel fortunate that I can give that gift so freely and with no attachments of any kind. Thank you everyone for listening. My email is contact@marcelalobos.com if anybody has questions, wants to stay in touch. Thank you, the Four Winds, for this opportunity, and I hope to see you. Aho.